Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Artesprix, and in this video I'm going to share creating with the Artesprix Sublimation necktie. We're going to create a bright, fun colored necktie that could be used for all kinds of things. A gift idea, a fun event. The possibilities really are endless when you start creating with this, and I hope it gives you some ideas. So let's go over the basic supplies that we'll be using for this project. I'm going to be using the Artesprix Sublimation Stamp Ink in black and the Artesprix Sublimation Acrylic Paint in yellow. Now you could use any color combinations you would like and mix and match for your projects. I'm going to be using a sheet of copy paper. Yes, plain ordinary copy paper, which is awesome because you can paint on this, you can design on it, and if you don't like it, set it aside for another project. You don't need to waste the paint or your materials that you're using. You could use that for something different and then just grab a simple piece of copy paper to use for that. We're going to be using a paintbrush, pencil. Pencil does not transfer to your sublimation blanks, so you want to use this and not a pen or a marker so you can trace this to get your template size. A pair of scissors. You're going to need the Artesprix heat tape, Artesprix protective paper. This is siliconized paper that is going to protect your surface of your heat press, whatever heat source you are using, which I have my heat source over here to the right hand side. It is set for 400 degrees and we're going to be pressing each section for 60 seconds. Then you're going to also grab whatever you want to use to create with this. You can use stamps, you could use the sublimation markers to draw for the project. All kinds of things can be done. I'm going to be using a fun, unique stamp set that I have in my stash, as well as a stamping block for use with the stamps. I do have my Artesprix heat safe protective mat over here. When you take your blanks out of the heat source, they are extremely hot at 400 degrees. So I use this to protect the surface on my workspace. I use this protective pad for all kinds of projects, not just with Artesprix. And then I have a paint palette. I have a cup over here with some water and some paper towels as well. So let's go ahead and get started creating. I'm simply going to set my blank aside. I do keep the protective wrapping on my blanks until I'm ready to use them. This is going to protect the surface from any lint and dust. That lint and dust is not good for sublimation blanks. It can leave little blue specks and spots. So if you do remove the protective cover, make sure to use a lint roller prior to pressing on that. So I'm going to set this aside out of my way, and then I'm going to set this up. And all I'm going to do, so I don't have to be perfect, is I'm going to take a little bit of the sublimation paint. I'm going to paint the entire page, and then I'm going to let this dry. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. And the best part about this is that with paints or even the sublimation stamps, you can create all kinds of textures. So you can have the paint brush strokes show on your page if you'd like. I love that you can get a unique look with these products, and you could even add a texture in on the page if you chose to do so. In this one, I think it's going to show off some of my brush strokes, and it's going to give it a unique look. It's not going to be 100% perfect all over. The shading is going to be different. So we'll just go ahead and finish out this page, and I'll speed up the video. Okay, now one thing I do want to mention that I forgot to say is that I am also using a silicone mat underneath my workspace. This is going to make for easy cleanup, and then I'm going to set this aside to dry. You do want it to be fully dry, and you don't want to, since we're using just copy paper, you don't want to oversaturate your page too much, or you could then have it start to tear. You could also use, I have a little brush stroke in here somewhere. You could also use a mixed media paper as well, but I wanted to show that it could be done simply using copy paper too. So I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm going to clean up my workspace. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take with my water that I have over here. You can use a baby wipe. I am going to wash that out as soon as I get done cleaning up my space. But I can just take water and I can just clean this up real quick so it doesn't get on any of my further project. And it cleans up on your workspace very nicely. I'm going to put my brush in some water to keep that, and then I'll just wash that out very well once I am finished with the video. Since I had to let that dry, I did prepare a couple sheets. I calculated what I would need for this project with the length of the tie, which is 56 inches. So just depending on what you decide to put on your tie, if you're going to make that a solid color or not, you do want to be aware that anything that is white on your page is going to show the white through on this sublimation blank. So we're going to go ahead for the next step. I'm going to take one of my sheets and make sure that it is completely dry before I use my tie. I don't want to get ink on it prior to using that. And I got a little bit of water on there, so I'm going to set that one aside. Make sure my whole workspace is dry. And okay. Then I'm just going to take this and I'm going to take the tag off so I can use this. The largest part of this tie is this wide part here. So I just want to make sure that I have that covered. I don't technically need to do the template for the entire tie because it graduates down. So I want to just make sure on this one that I'm going to draw and give myself a template area for that beginning start. And then I will be able to use both sides of this sheet of paper that I have colored with the sublimation ink. So I can go ahead and I can cut these two sheets down to the size. And you could be even more precise if you chose to do so. Not sure it'll show on the camera, but you can definitely see the brush strokes in this. So you could do all kinds of texture and different ideas for that. So now I'm going to set my tie aside so it is not going to get ink on it. And then I'm going to grab my stamps and get this all ready. And then it's going to be a matter of deciding where you want the placement. The only thing I would advise is that we're going to have to piece this design together when we go to press it. So I would not encourage a design that's off the page or it won't line up right. And you would definitely notice that when you go to see the transitions. So we're going to try to transition this. Since I have a kind of brush stroke and distress look, that's going to hopefully help in those transitions. But just keep your designs away from the edges of the very edge of your page where your tie is going to transition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide which one I want. And I like these fun characters that just give it a unique look. So I can kind of decide which one I want to be the focal point of my tie. I like this guy or this guy. I think we'll just go with this one. And you can always do another project. So then I'm going to take this, going to grab my ink pad, and I like to grab an extra sheet of copy paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stamp this off. Then if the stamp turns out great on the first stamp, you could also use that for a future project. But I want to make sure that I have some good ink coverage. So I'm just going to press that down. That looks great. So I could use that on a future project. I'll just set that aside and I'll re-ink that. Especially if you have new stamps, you always want to try to season them with whatever ink you're using, whether that's Artesprix or a regular ink for card making. It helps to have some very good coverage. And then I'm going to press that down. And then I'm going to take all of my pages, and through movie magic, you're going to watch me stamp in fast action. One thing to keep in mind when you are using sublimation products is that everything will turn out mirrored at the end. So any words that you would be doing would need to be mirrored prior to placing them onto your copy paper. In this case, it does not matter with these birds. I did grab an extra sheet of copy paper here so I could stamp off the edge of that page and not get the sublimation ink on my surface. And then you're just going to want to continue to place those. So just keep in mind your placement, play around with it. You can always redo it if you don't like what it turns out to be. It's just a simple sheet of copy paper. So I was adding things onto this page here and testing to see what I wanted to do. But make sure to mirror any designs that you are working with if necessary, or just keep in mind that they are going to be the opposite on your final blank. Continue to stamp on the additional pieces of copy paper until you have everything filled up as you desire. In this case, I knew I could mix and match according to how I wanted to when I went to place that final design. Now, once you have all of the pages you need stamped and ready to go, I am going to take the Artesprix all-purpose cleaner. I'm going to clean my stamps. If you do not have this, you can also simply use water, and you want to clean your stamps really well for your next use. I will also give a little tip here. Make sure that there's no water wherever you set your designs. I accidentally set this on top of a drop of water, and then it smeared my sublimation ink and made it run. So I just had to use another sheet. It was no problem at all because I created extras at the beginning. I can also take these images and I could use the ones that are not bled out for a different project. This is a full stamped image, so I could use both of these for another project too. So I'm just gonna set that aside. And then I also had one where I didn't get it stamped completely, but I still have some other images that I could use for future projects. So don't throw those away, keep those. Make sure you can have fun with those too. So now I have all of my things. I'm gonna clean up my inks, and then we'll come back and get ready to put this together. Now, since I have had my tie out, I am going to grab a lint roller. Better to be safe than have hopefully those dots to show up. So I am simply going to grab the completely dry pages that I have, and it'll depend on how you stamped or what order you want this to go in. So I am going to set up the first one, and then it will be a repeat job for getting the entire length of the tie finished. So we'll go through the steps here for the very bottom of this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lint roll this just to pick up any debris, any fibers. When you have sublimation ink, it is a scientific process. It's science. Once that sublimation ink is subjected to high heat, it turns into a gas, which then transfers to your sublimation blank. Any of those fibers or dust fibers could also show up after the fact. If you've ever had little blue dots, that could be why on a sublimation project. So I have my design here. I am simply going to place it face down or down on there, and I'm going to place my tie in this template area. This is the only one I really have to be, I want to be focused on, simply because I put a focal point here. So then I'm going to grab my heat tape and secure this in place. Again, pencil does not transfer, so I don't need to worry about those pencil marks, but you do not want to use pen or marker, or that could transfer to your blank. So I wanted to make this a fun little whimsical tie that you could wear for any kind of fun event. Now that I have that, I'm going to grab my siliconized protective paper, and I'm going to cut out sheets that will cover this fully, and we're going to make our sublimation sandwich. Now, since I have a small enough width, I can simply cut out sublimation paper that is one length, and I do have excess here. I always like to be safer than sorry, because you do not want to get sublimation ink onto your heat press platen, or it can transfer to future projects. So I have a sheet of sublimation of protective paper on the bottom. I'm going to place my blank in the next layer, and my sublimation image is on the top. I want to make sure if I have any ink on the outer edges here that it is inside of this protective paper. I do not want it to come in contact with my press. And then I'm going to roll the rest of the sublimation protective paper over top of that and just fold it. And then I have a nice secure sublimation sandwich that I'm going to transfer over to my heat press. Now I'm going to press this at 400 degrees for 60 seconds, and then we will come back and we're going to add in the next sections. When you place this onto your press, you want to make sure that it is fully under the press and that your sublimation paper is at your top platen. Place it in there securely. Make sure no ink is uncovered, and then I'm going to close the press for 60 seconds. It is very hot when it comes off the press, so I moved my protective mat onto my work surface to protect that. I removed the protective paper. You do not want to reuse this when there is ink that is, you can visibly see that ink. It could transfer to your next project. And then carefully remove your heat tape. And here is a look at the first press. Turned out awesome. I'm going to work to line this up with the next print that I have, and I am working very carefully. As I went to press this next layer, I kind of got a little bit nervous about these transitions, and it's just going to take some practice, and I have to tell you, it turned out fabulous. It was better than I expected it to be, but I was crossing my fingers on that second time because, of course, when you're on camera, all kinds of things can happen. So I'm just deciding which layer is the best one to put for that next layer. As you can see, that tie does get smaller as it goes along to the other end, and so placement for those stamped images could vary, and I just wanted to make sure that that transition at the bottom there was secured. As you do it over and over, you'll figure out new ways or different ways that help in order to tape that and get that transition. I placed the tape underneath the tie first and then wrapped it around as I went through it. And when it came off the press, this transition, I was just amazed when it came out because I was kind of worried. So just keep going. You never know what it's going to turn out with. Now, I do have some press marks there, which I can press those out. That's not a problem. So then I just continued to add. Once I reached the middle point on the tie, I did flip it around and started the birds in the other direction. I didn't want them hanging upside down, so I just continued. It is the back side of the tie, so most people aren't even going to see that anyhow. And then I just continued to tape that, secure it in place, used my sublimation protective paper, and created my sublimation sandwich, and continued to press until the entire tie was finished. Here's a look at that finished project. Make sure to check out the Artesprix blog for additional ideas on the tie creation, as well as additional information on their sublimation products. Here's a look at that finished focal point for this tie. Use the Artesprix products to create unique and fun ideas. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.